Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today we are going to take a look at Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, a game from I think around 1988 from Games Workshop. Let's read a little bit about Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. I love this old art here. Games Workshop did a really good job of displaying the contents of their boxed games on the backs of their boxes. But this says, when the moon conjoins with the planet of the god Anubis, the elixir of eternal life will flow. Whoever partakes of that sacred water shall stay youthful for 100 years. Immortality is the reward for he who overcomes the dead that walk. Includes full rules for solo play. Okay. The rules that's written for solo play, if I were only to play the game in that way, I could say that Curse of the Mummy's Tomb is one of the worst games that I own. Rules as written, the solo game is basically Candyland. But the reason why I own this game and the reason why it is still in my collection is because of the art. And most of the art in the game is done by the great Gary Chalk. Of course, Gary Chalk, the artist who did a ton of work with Games Workshop and also worked with Joe Deaver on the Lone Wolf fantasy, solo fantasy game books. And I've mentioned his name many times before. It's no secret that a lot of us old dudes love Gary Chalk. His art is really fantastic. This is a book that contains a lot of his art that was used in many of the Lone Wolf books. I believe this goes up to around book 8 or so. And these are all books that I've experienced. And the art was just really great. And it was something that I liked quite a bit when I was younger. And I still really enjoy Gary Chalk's art. And it's one of the main reasons why I am a pretty big fan of a lot of the old Games Workshop games from this era, because of this man right here. But let's talk a little bit about the solo mode for this game. And then we'll go into some detail about the competitive mode, because I think at least in the competitive mode, there is a little bit more of a game here. So what you're going to be doing in this game is you are going to be taking one of these heroes, one of these investigators here. You can play as Professor Nayland Cushing, I should say. Cushing is a world-famous explorer whose journeys into the unknown have enthralled newspaper readers for over 20 years. Now at the pinnacle of his career, he faces his greatest challenge. He must find the elixir and preserve it for scientific study. Okay, so Professor Cushing there, obviously a play on Peter Cushing. We've got the Reverend Luther Kierkegaard here. We've got Lieutenant General the Earl of Carmarthen. And then I am playing here as Marlowe Hammett. So kind of a Dashiell Hammett, Philip Marlowe conglomeration there. But you're going to have stats for your lives, for your hit points here. And then each of the characters will have a different stat for cunning, dexterity, Egyptology, fortune, speed, strength, and will. These will be referred to when you have different encounters in the game. And each of the characters also has 3 starred attributes. And those are the attributes that you have to test to win the game. Because what you're trying to do is you are trying to move your way up this pyramid board. And here is like the main gimmick is this pyramid board. And you're moving up from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. And then when you reach level 3, you need to have a key of Osiris, which is kind of like your talisman. You need to have that in order to move up to the top here. And when you reach the top of that, you have to test all 3 of those stats in any order you want. The way that you test a stat is you take a D12 and you have to roll your stat or under. So in order for the Earl of Carmarthen here to pass his dexterity test, I would need to roll a 5 or under. And if I did not, then I would have to retry the test each time. So you can get to the very top of the game and the very last space of the game and almost win and be there forever just trying to roll your stats or under. So that can be a little frustrating. But the solo game, okay, so here's how the solo game works. You have a deck of cards here. These are going to be all of your encounter cards. And this is, again, where the Gary Chalk art comes into play here. Some of it is quite good. I do like the way that these cards look. You have different cards. You have some enemy cards. And then you have some obstacles. Let's see, there are 3 different kinds of cards here. There are hazard, creatures, and discoveries. So these are hazards. Those are like traps and things. There are creatures that you will have to fight. And then there are discoveries. And these are cards that you can play on your character in order to give them certain bonuses. So these are all of your encounter cards here, and you give those a shuffle. And then you have another deck here of your movement cards. And these are all cards that dictate how you move through the dungeon. And you move through the pyramid, I should say, in cardinal directions according to the compass on the top of the map there. And so normally in a competitive game, this deck is going to be mixed with this deck, and each player is going to have a hand of cards from which they can choose to move, they can choose to play. At certain points, you can play cards on other players. You can force them to move into inopportune spaces. You can play traps and stuff on other players. But in a solo game, you take out the movement cards and you shuffle those into their own deck. And at that point, you have basically determined whether or not you are going to win the game. Because on each turn, you draw a card and you move if you can. Just like Candyland. It's really, really dumb. But you start in one of the 4 starting spaces are these arrows. In the solo game, you start with the mummy. So we have the mummy here. The minis are actually quite nice. I especially love the mini here for Professor Nayland Cushing. Really, really cool old Games Workshop mini there. And so I am playing here. So there is my Marlowe Hammett, my Dashiell Hammett or Philip Marlowe character. And you take your mummy and you put the mummy on one of his starting spots. And at the beginning of your turn, you will roll a d12. On a 10, 11, or 12, the mummy moves 1 space towards you. Okay, a 7, so the mummy does not move. And now you draw 1 card. I should also say, we have these, what are these called? The Tana leaves, I believe. Yeah, the Tana leaves. And those are these small cards here, numbers 1 through 5. You start with 6 of those. And in the competitive game, you will use those to bid on who controls the mummy. So whoever, it's a blind bid, you take however many you want, hold them in a hand, open it up, and whoever bids the most of these Tana leaves, they get to control the mummy for that turn. So there's a little bit of blind bidding in the competitive mode. In the solo mode, the Tana leaves are basically just used to heal your character. So after you've rolled for your mummy to see if your mummy is going to attack you, then you draw 1 movement card and you move if you can. Okay, so this is as stairs up. So to go up, you have to be directly under the next level to move up, and the colors will match. On the outer ring, you cannot move up to the next level. So I cannot play that card. So I discard it and I draw 1 Tana leaf. That's my turn. This entire deck, once you shuffle it, dictates whether or not you are going to go through the maze or not. Roll to see if the mummy moves. A 10. Okay, the mummy moves on a 10, 11, or 12, so he moves 1 space towards me. He moves. My turn. I can move 1 space towards the northwest. Okay, well, I can't move towards the northwest because that would put me out of the dungeon there. So that's it. I discard and I draw 1 Tana leaf. Now let's see if the mummy moves. 9. Okay, the mummy does not move. Now I draw another movement card. Oh, look, it's another stair. Okay, I can't move up. I don't draw any Tana leaves. That's that turn. Does the mummy move? 9. No. Draw another card. Oh, hey, look, I can move now. I can move southwest or northeast. Okay, so I'm going to move northeast, which puts me there. And now I've landed on a square with a number. When you land on a square with a number, you draw a number of the encounter cards that equals that number. And you can face 1 enemy, 1 hazard, and up to 1 discovery. So let's see. The first card I draw is an obstacle. or a hazard. Okay, so this is the Evil of Apep. Test your willpower. If you fail, discard all the discovery cards you have placed beside your play sheet. Okay, so I have to face this Evil of Apep. Cool thing here is there's a little more detail about each of the cards on this mummy's tome. So we have creature cards here, and this gives you a little bit of flavor. So this is kind of where Games Workshop, of course, always injects a lot of cool flavor text. And back in the 80s, they were really into having these supplemental sheets that contained some information. But let's look up the Evil of Apep here. Let's see, is there any more information on that guy here? Fool's Fall, Sealed Portal, Poison Dart, Sands of Time. Evil of Apep. A strange and ghostly aura envelops you, and swirling lights bemuse your mind. Slowly, you begin to feel your mind slipping away. Test your will. If you fail, you lose all of your discoveries you have played beside your sheet. You must still face any creature encounter cards, but you should discard any discoveries. If you succeed, you may encounter creatures and discoveries as usual. Okay, so let's say this was actually like a 3 and we drew 2 more. So you can never face more than one of the same kind of card. And so I want to see, okay, so we have a discovery there, and then we can also have a creature. So you would face it in this order here. You would face your trap, your obstacle. I always forget what these are called. Your hazard, your creature, and then your discovery. So the first thing I would have to do is face off against this Evil of Apep, test my willpower. My willpower here is a 4. So I need to roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and I rolled a 10. Okay, so I would have to discard any discovery, so I wouldn't be able to take this discovery, but now I would still have to fight against Anubis. And to fight, the fighting rules are quite simple. They are here in this sheet here. The combat reference, so you attack, the player rolls a d12 plus strength, the monster rolls a d12 plus strength, whoever gets the highest wins. If you tie, then the monster captures you. And when the monster captures you, this game does another really cool thing where that means that you are trapped and you possibly lose turns until you roll a speed test, I believe. I can't remember what it is, but you have to roll one of your stats in order to escape from being captured. So you could also spend a lot of time being captured by the monsters. But let's say I defeated the trap, I defeated the monster, and then I would be able to get this archaeologist kit, which as long as you have this card beside your play sheet, you may increase your dexterity in Egyptology by 1. Okay, that's kind of cool. So then I would maybe get that as an item, and I could add that to my character sheet, and then I could build up my character a little bit by getting those. And that is basically the entire game. You want to try to get one of those keys of Osiris at some point, but really you are completely at the whim of that initial shuffle of these cards. So my next turn, I would roll to see if the mummy moves. 12, the mummy does move 1 towards me there, so he's getting closer. Then I would draw this card here, and I could go up. So now I would go up, and then I would be on this 3, and then now I would draw 3 counter cards to see what I encountered, and so on, rinse and repeat. So yeah, the solo game, nothing to write home about. Absolutely no decisions whatsoever to be made, not even like a talisman level of decision play, of decisions to make. I think there are probably a couple of ways that you could make it better, such as I was thinking of, okay, so you draw 1 card, and if you can't use it, you can kind of tempt fate to where you could draw another card, but if you do, you automatically have to take an encounter and deal with that. Now, it could be good, it could be bad, so adding a little bit of pressure luck in order to cycle through your movement a little better. Or maybe at the beginning of the game, you draw 3, and then you have to kind of like the house rules that I play Talisman with. You use these as your hand of movement cards, and you have to play all 3 before you can draw 3 more. Or maybe if you wanted to discard one to draw another one, then you also have to draw an encounter card in order to kind of press your luck that way. That could be kind of a cool way to play the game that would add at least a little bit of a pressure luck element. So the competitive game, you start with a hand of cards. You mix these two decks together, and you start with a hand of 5 cards. And after your opponent, after one of your opponents has taken their turn, you have the opportunity to play movement cards on them, kind of simulating the danger of this labyrinth maze. So you can force your opponent onto spaces with more encounters. You can't force your opponent to land on the mummy, though. But you can put them in awkward situations or awkward spaces if you wanted. And then everybody around the table has a turn to play one of these hazard cards, or enemy cards, or discovery cards. You can also play discovery cards on yourself, and in order to attach that to your character, you have to beat whatever discovery or whatever hazard or enemy cards are played on you by the other players. So there is a lot more decision making in how you play your hand of cards, and having a take that elements to the game. And so I imagine that the competitive mode is much better, and that really is how the game should be played. I cannot recommend this game at all for people who are looking for a solo game. There's just really nothing to it, unless you are just a collector of 80s Games Workshop games, which I kind of am. I have a few. Or if you really like the art of Gary Chalk. If you like the art of Gary Chalk, then I think this could be a piece to buy just for a collection. Now, it goes for way too much money on eBay. I've seen it going up to like $200, which is insane. I've seen it as low as $50. I would buy this game at maybe $20. If it was a really clean copy, maybe $40 if you're a collector. But I do not recommend going out and buying this. I do not think this is a hidden gem. I don't think this is one that will ever be reprinted in any way. Yeah, it's not something it's not a holy grail game by any stretch of the imagination, but it could be something that you want if you're into collecting Gary Chalk art or into collecting Games Workshop games from this era. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at Curse of the Mummy's Tomb with me, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.